Jacob settled again in the land of Canaan, where his father had lived as a foreigner. This is the account of Jacob and his family. When Joseph was 17 years old, he often tended his father's flocks. He worked for his half-brothers, the sons of his father's wives Bilhah and Zilpah. But Joseph reported to his father some of the bad things his brothers were doing. Jacob loved Joseph more than any of his other children, because Joseph had been born to him in his old age. So one day Jacob had a special gift made for Joseph, a beautiful robe. But his brothers hated Joseph because their father loved him more than the rest of them. They couldn't say a kind word to him. One night, Joseph had a dream, and when he told his brothers about it, they hated him more than ever. "Listen to this dream," he said. "We were out in the field, tying up bundles of grain. Suddenly my bundle stood up, and your bundles all gathered around and bowed low before mine." His brothers responded, "So you think you will be our king, do you? Do you actually think you will reign over us?" And they hated him all the more because of his dreams and the way he talked about them. Soon Joseph had another dream, and again he told his brothers about it. "Listen, I have had another dream," he said. "The sun, moon, and 11 stars bowed low before me." This time he told the dream to his father as well as to his brothers, but his father scolded him. "What kind of dream is that?" he asked. "Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow to the ground before you?" But while his brothers were jealous of Joseph, his father wondered what the dreams meant. Soon after this, Joseph's brothers went to pasture their father's flocks at Shechem. When they had been gone for some time, Jacob said to Joseph, "Your brothers are pasturing the sheep at Shechem. Get ready, and I will send you to them." "I'm ready to go," Joseph replied. "Go and see how your brothers and the flocks are getting along," Jacob said. "Then come back and bring me a report." So Jacob sent him on his way, and Joseph traveled to Shechem from their home in the valley of Hebron. When he arrived there, a man from the area noticed him wandering around the countryside. "What are you looking for?" he asked. "I'm looking for my brothers," Joseph replied. "Do you know where they are pasturing their sheep?" "Yes," the man told him. "They have moved on from here, but I heard them say, 'Let's go on to Dothan.'" So Joseph followed his brothers to Dothan and found them there. When Joseph's brothers saw him coming, they recognized him in the distance. As he approached, they made plans to kill him. "Here comes the dreamer," they said. "Come on, let's kill him and throw him into one of these cisterns. We can tell our father, a wild animal has eaten him. Then we'll see what becomes of his dreams." But when Reuben heard of their scheme, he came to Joseph's rescue. "Let's not kill him," he said. "Why should we shed any blood? Let's just throw him into this empty cistern here in the wilderness. Then he'll die without our laying a hand on him." Reuben was secretly planning to rescue Joseph and return him to his father. So when Joseph arrived, his brothers ripped off the beautiful robe he was wearing. Then they grabbed him and threw him into the cistern. Now the cistern was empty. There was no water in it. Then, just as they were sitting down to eat, they looked up and saw a caravan of camels in the distance coming toward them. It was a group of Ishmaelite traders taking a load of gum, balm, and aromatic resin from Gilead down to Egypt. Judah said to his brothers, "What will we gain by killing our brother? We'd have to cover up the crime. Instead of hurting him, let's sell him to those Ishmaelite traders. After all, he is our brother, our own flesh and blood." And his brothers agreed. So when the Ishmaelites, who were Midianite traders, came by, Joseph's brothers pulled him out of the cistern and sold him to them for 20 pieces of silver, and the traders took him to Egypt. Some time later, Reuben returned to get Joseph out of the cistern. When he discovered that Joseph was missing, he tore his clothes in grief. Then he went back to his brothers and lamented, "The boy is gone. What will I do now?" Then the brothers killed a young goat and dipped Joseph's robe in its blood. They sent the beautiful robe to their father with this message, "Look at what we found. Doesn't this robe belong to your son?" Their father recognized it immediately. "Yes," he said, "it is my son's robe. A wild animal must have eaten him. Joseph has clearly been torn to pieces." Then Jacob tore his clothes and dressed himself in burlap. He mourned deeply for his son for a long time. His family all tried to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. "I will go to my grave mourning for my son," he would say, and then he would weep. Meanwhile, the Midianite traders arrived in Egypt, where they sold Joseph to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. Potiphar was captain of the palace guard.
Okay, so are you ready for some serious family drama?
Buckle up.
Because today, we are diving into a story full of jealousy
Betrayal.
and dreams.
The kind that would make even Freud scratch his beard.
We're talking about the epic story of Joseph.
From the book of Genesis, of course.
Chapter 37, to be exact.
Where the drama all begins.
So we're dropped right into this family.
And it is a big one.
With Jacob, the patriarch, and his 12 sons.
12 sons. Can you imagine?
I can barely handle my 2 nephews.
Right.
And it becomes clear pretty quickly that one son in particular is the favorite.
Joseph.
The youngest.
The baby of the family.
And boy, does Jacob let everyone know it.
Oh, yeah. The text really emphasizes this preferential treatment.
Like when Jacob gifts Joseph this beautiful robe.
It's like waving a giant favorite child banner. Right in front of all the other 11 kids.
Talk about a recipe for disaster.
And as if that wasn't enough to fuel the sibling rivalry.
Joseph starts having these crazy, vivid dreams.
Which back then weren't just something you'd shrug off over morning coffee.
No, not at all.
Dreams were considered prophetic messages.
Glimpses into the future.
So when Joseph dreams of his brother's sheaves of grain bowing down to his sheaf,
Remember, these guys were farmers.
their livelihood depended on those crops.
It wasn't just some random, meaningless image.
It was a powerful symbol of dominance.
Yeah, I can only imagine the look on their faces when he told them about that one.
Oh, I bet they just loved hearing about that.
Especially since their brother is just a teenager at this point.
It's just a kid, really.
But it gets even more intense.
Oh yeah, the drama's just getting started.
Joseph has another dream.
Lay it on us.
This time it's the sun, the moon, and 11 stars bowing down to him.
Whoa. Now we're talking about the whole family.
Even Jacob himself.
Bowing to this young man.
Imagine being one of those brothers hearing about that dream.
I'd be fuming.
Jealous.
Definitely.
Insecure.
100%.
Maybe even a little homicidal.
Well, about that.
Because what does Jacob do?
Oh yeah, he sends Joseph out to check on those very same brothers.
Who, if we remember?
Definitely haven't forgotten about those dreams.
Right, so Jacob sends Joseph to Shechem.
To check on his brothers who are tending the flocks.
Which, just reminder, wasn't exactly a hop, skip, and a jump away.
Oh no, we're talking a serious journey here.
It would have taken young Joseph some time to travel alone.
Quite a bit of time.
And what happens when those brothers see Joseph approaching in the distance?
They don't exactly roll out the welcome mat.
Let's just say their reaction is a little less, welcome home, brother.
And a little more, let's get rid of this guy.
Okay, I get it. Sibling rivalry.
It's as old as time.
But plotting to kill your brother.
Extreme, to say the least.
What would push someone to even think about doing that?
Well, you have to remember the cultural context.
Right, we're talking about a time when your place in the family,
Determined your entire future.
your inheritance,
Your status.
your entire life, really.
Exactly.
So for those brothers,
Joseph's dreams weren't just some childish fantasies.
they were a direct threat.
To their social standing.
Their livelihood.
Their entire identity.
It was like he was saying, hey, guess what?
Mm-hmm.
One day, I'm going to be in charge.
And they weren't about to just sit around and let that happen.
So they decide to take matters into their own hands.
Driven by jealousy, insecurity.
And maybe a little too much testosterone.
They hatched this plan to get rid of Joseph once and for all.
But not everyone's immediately on board with murder.
No, there's a little bit of a conscience in the group.
Reuben, the eldest brother,
Tries to pump the brakes a bit.
he suggests throwing Joseph into a cistern instead.
You know, as a slightly less gruesome alternative.
Okay, so maybe he gets a few points for trying to save Joseph's life.
But let's not forget, he's still complicit in this whole scheme.
Right. It makes you wonder, was he really trying to help Joseph?
Or was he just trying to avoid getting blood on his own hands?
Maybe he figured they could always come back for him later.
Or maybe he thought this would buy some time to reason with the others.
Who knows what was going through Reuben's head?
The text leaves it open to interpretation.
Which I have to say just adds another layer of complexity to this already messy family drama.
Absolutely.
So we've got a group of brothers.
Consumed by their own anger and resentment.
A vulnerable young man.
Stuck at the bottom of a pit.
And a whole lot of bad decisions about to be made.
Oh, it's about to get worse.
Because just when you thought things couldn't get any more dramatic?
A group of unexpected travelers enters the scene.
And trust me,
This is where the story takes a turn.
so picture this. A caravan of Ishmaelite traders
Just traveling along.
on their way from Gilead to Egypt.
When they come across this scene,
A group of brothers hanging out by a well.
with their youngest sibling trapped inside.
Talk about being in the wrong place at the wrong time.
For Joseph, definitely.
Right.
But for those brothers,
This chance encounter.
it's almost like a sign.
Yeah, like some kind of twisted opportunity.
Because instead of getting their hands dirty,
Instead of actually having to kill Joseph themselves
they see a way to get rid of him.
and make a profit while they're at it.
It's Judah this time
Another one of the brothers.
who comes up with the brilliant idea.
Oh no. What did he cook up?
He suggests selling Joseph into slavery
Wow. Okay.
instead of murder
We've gone from attempted fratricide,
to cold, hard business.
and the text doesn't even make it seem like a difficult decision.
No, it happens pretty quickly.
They haggle over the price a bit,
Like they're selling a used camel,
and they settle on 20 pieces of silver.
which, if you know your Old Testament history,
Was the standard going rate for a slave at the time?
it's like they're putting a price tag.
On their own brother's life.
It really makes you think about how far they've strayed.
From any sense of family loyalty.
Or basic human decency, really.
Right.
But here's the thing.
They might have avoided actually killing Joseph
But they still have to go back
and face their father.
and explain what happened.
Yeah, good luck explaining that one away.
Oh, hey, Dad, remember Joseph?
The one you loved more than all of us?
Yeah, funny story about that.
So what do?
They come up with a plan.
Let me guess.
It involves a goat.
Of course it does.
A bloody robe.
Oh, no, not the robe.
The very same one.
The one Jacob gave to Joseph.
As a sign of his
The
favoritism.
one that basically started this whole mess.
Yep, they take that robe
Dip it in goat's blood
and present it to their father.
as proof of Joseph's demise.
Can you imagine being Jacob in that moment?
I can't even imagine
The heartbreak,
the
The-
guilt.
just sheer devastation.
The text doesn't hold back on describing his grief.
No, it's raw,
Visceral.
heart-wrenching.
It's a grief that threatens to consume him entirely.
And so we leave this chapter
On a cliffhanger.
with Joseph's fate uncertain,
Jacob utterly devastated.
and the brothers left to grapple with the weight of their actions.
And the web of lies they've spun.
It's a powerful ending.
To a truly unsettling chapter.
And it leaves us with so many questions.
And what will happen to Joseph?
Will his dreams ever come true?
Will those brothers ever face any consequences for what they've done?
Guess we'll have to wait and see.
That's right, listeners.
Tune in next time.
As we continue our deep dive into the epic story of Joseph
Only here.
on The Deep Dive.